I thought to begin with the story of the Jane Drew Prize ceremony. This was in March when I had already had a rather hectic schedule talking about barefoot social architecture and heritage of Pakistan. The RIBA lecture at V&A Dundee, architecture on stage at the Barbican, and then there was the Intbau discourse at V&A London, and a discussion at World Monuments Fund, an exclusive dinner organized by John Darlington regarding Pakistan's heritage, in both of which Robert was also present. And a highly gratifying meeting with His Royal Highness Prince Charles regarding lowering the carbon footprint in buildings, which I suggested would materialize if funding agencies could be persuaded to become zero carbon champions. In my acceptance speech at the Jane Drew Prize ceremony, I explained that I had been taken by surprise when I received the news. Having given up my practice some 20 years ago and pursuing a mid-course correction by foregoing iconic extravagance in order to pursue democratic architectural norms, which could be considered non-architecture by some actually, it was a surprise to be included among lifetime creators of stellar architecture, the most famous being Zaha Hadid. I also related a small story. And I said last November, among other eminent experts, humanitarian architect Eric Cecil was attending our Intbau Pakistan International Conference at Zero Carbon Campus at Makli. And I introduced him to Nair Ali Dada, who's with us today. We're very fortunate to have him, saying, meet the best known architect of Pakistan. And he looked at me and he said, but Yasmeen, I thought you were the one. And I'm mindful of the general perception, I had to correct him that Nair was actually a famous architect, while I was just a barefoot one. On the occasion, I also said that it was wonderful that the prize equalized both star and barefoot architecture, which I hoped would transform perceptions and mindsets regarding how architects and architecture need to deal with the complexities posed by a post-colonial world order. Of course, that is brought into even a sharper focus due to the current pandemic. So coming to the lectures, the first lecture titled Prima Donna or Barefoot Architect consisted of discussion regarding rising inequalities around the world with concentration of wealth among only 1%. Along with impact of global warming, climate emergencies and recurring disasters, climate change migrants in conflict-impelled camps for the displaced, and the imperatives of the emergent COVID-19 pandemic. So you'll show you some slides of the Zero Carbon Center. This is the residential campus and the Intbau Center you'll see. And I discussed the Intbau Pakistan International Conference also that I mentioned, which was held in November of last year. And this is just to show you, what I went through in my first lecture. So there is the Zero Carbon Campus we'll see, and also I think delegates of the Intbau conference. If you can go to the next slides, you'll be able to see them. So let's see if we can. This was actually the Intbau Center. This is the Zero Carbon Center, the cultural center called ZC3. And then the next, we'll see the distinguished delegates who actually had attended the conference. Can we get the slide there? There they are. So on the occasion of the creation of, on that occasion, also we talked about the creation of Zero Carbon Admin Architects Disaster Management Network that was announced, which has been formed to meet the challenges of the current pandemic. And you see proposal for prefab emergency facilities in this particular slide. So the second to the fourth lectures were based on various tenets of barefoot social architecture, or BAZA. BAZA is akin to social engineering for bringing about social change, incorporating environmental, cultural, and technical dimensions. As we know, on the one hand, BAZA seeks to democratize architecture that provides people with well-being and self-esteem. On the other, it has partiality for zero carbon footprint. Under BAZA, Heritage Foundation has been able to provide humanitarian assistance to over 100,000 persons per year, targeting 12 out of 17 SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. Now we'll take up the 4 BAZA tenets one by one very quickly, just to recap what I said earlier on. So first, this is the first tenet, maximizing the barefoot ecosystem. This is something that's very important because I work with the poor, and that is the whole system, the whole ecosystem that exists, which somehow has been overlooked. Now, this slide will show you, or the next one will show you, the wide-ranging ecosystem with its barefoot economy, barefoot market, barefoot enterprise, barefoot entrepreneurs, barefoot services, and Barefoot products. And this is what I believe is the ecosystem that can help for us to help the poor rise above adversity. Now, the second tenet that I have, which is important, is the zero carbon humanistic architecture for pride and dignity and well-being. And the next slide will show you a neo-vernacular, which is drawn from age-old vernacular imagery. On the right is the neo-vernacular, on the left you see the picture of a village in Sindh after 2010 floods. And this is the neo-vernacular, of course, is improved through use of lime-stabilized earth and bamboo conical roof for disaster resilience. I also discussed actually at that time my lime guru, Marcus Vitruvius, the first BC Roman architect. And of course, for my earth guru, I have Hassan Fathy. And if you can see the slide for Hassan Fathy, as you can see, he was the first one who talked about the poor. And from both, I have drawn, absolute inspiration. They're the ones that lead me when I want to do things. And then, as you know, I'm an advocate of Baza, so the only palette I use are earth, lime, and bamboo. And I showed these graphics to show what are the qualities that we have in these three particular materials. Now, in the next slides, we have some examples of humanistic architecture as a result of co-building and co-creation. So there's the Zero Carbon Women's Center. We won't run I don't think we should run the thing. It might take too much time, but this is really to show how even when there's flooding, you can be safe on the upper level. This is actually done by Al Jazeera. So yeah, so yes. So Salman, I think we can move on to the next one, which is the slide for eco-architecture for pride. And you can see how women beautify their own homes. These are safe structures with mud and earth walls and bamboo roofs, and they're very, very strong. They're all safe, and they take pride in the way that they decorate them. And then, of course, the next slide will show you the award-winning Pakistan Chula, which, as you can see, is something that has really lifted women out of their really the apathetic state that they live in. And now everything is clean, and it's the food that is served is hygienic, and also that every woman decorates each one. So there are 60,000 of them that have been built, and each one really is a designer chula. So now we come to the third tenet, which is the delivery of unmet needs through Barefoot Incubator for social good and environmental sustainability. The incubator helps to train mendicant communities, along with monitoring and mentoring, to fabricate products for the other poor in order to fulfill their unmet needs. We don't necessarily teach them to make things for the rich. If they want to buy them, fine, but they're mainly for those poor who really need all these facilities to be able to live a dignified life. And then there's a whole range of products that are needed for the poor to survive. As you'll see in the next slide, the shelter, water, sanitation, chula, forest, food security, all kinds of little things that are needed for them to be able to live a life, at least, a kind of a reasonably comfortable life. And these are the products that they can have access to at a very economical rate. So there's a slide that will show you the Barefoot Incubator training, which provides the training for green skills and craft products in which 8 villages are specializing. And we have the next slide. Yeah, there it is. So there are 8 villages that make green products or crafts. And we found that within 12 months, 70% of 230 persons that were trained in this way had risen above the poverty line. So it's really not only the basic needs that we need to give them, but also skills which are useful for them to be able to market them around their own areas. And then normally we do the training in Zero Carbon Center in ZC3. And the next slide will show you, that they all gather together. And this is Kashi work going on here, and Kashi in terracotta. And that's how they learn. And the women are doing an amazing job of learning and producing some beautiful things. These are some of the products that were made by the Kashi village. Now we come to the fourth tenet, which is non-engineered structures. Now, these are for shrinking ecological footprint. I know that engineered structures are popular, and this is what we like to build. But I think we have to now look at materials that are local, that are sustainable, that are green, and maybe we won't be able to build engineered structures so easily. The non-engineered is the way to go. And if you can look at this particular slide, you will see that this particular kind of model has placed Pakistan in the lead as the largest zero carbon shelter program in the world. As you see, no carbon emissions, no trees were felled, 1,750 villages have been targeted, and 300,000 persons were housed. And there's the bamboo roof, and you can see how strong it is. Next slide will show you, actually I would have loved to have shown you the whole video of that, but the time is short and Murad is very strict. He told me to keep it to very limited timing. So we'll just show you a little bit of it. This is the earth and bamboo structure that did not collapse, even when subjected to 670% of Kobe earthquake movement. So this, I think, is this, yeah, this is 670 Kobe earthquake. So we can just watch it. And this has gone through several movements earlier. I mean, we went up to 25, 50, 75, 100, up to 200, 250, and then to 670. So you can see that it's just earth and bamboo, and how this has, strong enough to withstand all that. So now we'll move on to the fifth lecture, which was engagement of architects and communities with heritage. And it is focused on low carbon methods for saving our heritage. This is LEPI, Lari Emergency Preventive Intervention, which provides, possibility of really using very little money to be able to save quite a lot of our monuments. And I'd like to show you a couple of slides for that. So the slide I'm presenting to you is of Samma Noble 1. Sorry, this is of course the whole of the Makli. I can't resist putting in Makli images wherever I go, because I think it's such an important site and normally overlooked. So let's look at the next slide, which is of Samma Noble 1, which was a highly degraded monument when we took it on. And you can see on the left how bamboo has been used on the top left with the bamboo stakes, and so we were able to not let it collapse while we were working at it. And on the right, you can see how it was highly eroded, the whole masonry, and then we actually use only earth bricks to stabilize it. So these are possibilities which can be used for saving heritage. And the next one, I think we can see perhaps the tomb of Munir Maghfoori, and you can see on the left how it is. And then if you were even to just put a bamboo, dome, a cover, that would itself save it, and by time to help, to be able to, prolong its life. And then whenever funding is, a lot of funding is available, you can conserve it as you wish. These are all reversible, so there is not a problem, and they're all very, very light structures. So this was really what I had presented until the last lecture. But today, now we are talking, resetting the world with zero carbon approaches. And so I'd like to present some of the lessons from the past which can form the basis for eco-urbanism and for mitigating global warming. Now, the first one I thought I'd show you would be the zero energy wind cooling that can be attained by the unidirectional wind catcher of Thatta, where incoming breeze provides thermal control, air movement, as well as warm air exhaust. On the left, of course, the book that I wrote in the early 80s, and you can see how beautiful the wind catchers are, and you can see the graphic as to how the air moves. And then, of course, there is also the zero energy thermal comfort. In the next slide, we'll see, this is the slide of Sethi House, this amazing, amazing sort of whole mohalla of the Sethis who are in Peshawar. And this is achieved by utilizing passive solar design and thermal mass. The courtyard helps to store cool air during the night, keeping the interiors cool for much of the day. And then I thought just to bring to you, I mean, everybody's familiar with this, the fantastic Shalimar Gardens and the Lahore Fort, which are among the best examples. Shalimar Garden is really the best example of zero energy water cooling. This is a Chahar Bagh World Heritage Site, as you know, with spectacular water displays, creating a cool environment entirely by natural means. Water is also used in the paradisal quadrants in the Sheesh Mahal enclosure of the World Heritage Lahore Fort that you see on the right. Now, I also thought at this point in time, I'd present to you, our old towns, the traditional town, the traditional sustainable urbanism. I believe that many lessons can be drawn from our energy efficient traditional inner cities, many of which have several attributes for creation of low energy humanistic urbanism. You see the model of Lahore, the walled city, as you can see, and you can see at the the bottom right hand corner is the Lahore fort that is actually part of the walled city. So they could be what you see there is organic morphology, pedestrian non-vehicular streets, low-rise medium density development, mixed 24-hour cycle, zero or low energy natural cooling, passive solar design of structures, introverted and courtyard formations, incorporation of subterranean chambers, water mass cooling in urban spaces, semi-public spaces for interaction of people. So there's lots there that we can learn from. Now, such attributes can lead our cities towards low carbon resilience and enable us to help contain emissions to within 1.5 degrees centigrade rise required by COP21 agreement of 2015 in Paris. I'm not sure that we are reaching it because I think the news is not so good. I don't think many countries are really trying hard enough. So then what I thought we should discuss really, to me, traditional urbanism really is equal to ecological urbanism. And, many of us really believe in it, certainly myself. And I think this is something that I would like that we should be working towards. So being responsible for 65 to 70% of greenhouse gas emissions, our urban centers will remain global warming battlegrounds unless urban professionals devise ways to convert them into eco-cities. So as I've explained earlier, traditional urbanism is a result of local wisdom, use of sustainable materials and techniques for minimizing the use of energy. Thus, we need to adopt design principles that can help transform our present wasteful urban centers into low-carbon eco-enclaves. For example, as I put down, creation of compact cities, not urban sprawl models, low-rise, medium-density mixed-use developments, not skyscrapers, vehicle-free, walkable enclaves, and giving preference to public transport rather than private vehicles, greenery and water bodies, low-impact hybrid architecture that minimizes energy consumptive materials, and above all, saving all heritage buildings, as any replacement will only add to further carbon emissions. So I thought I'll just present to you one, sort of project that we are trying to now implement. I'm not sure what will happen now with the COVID situation, but here it is. So this is really, it's an alternative which I've developed for Karachi. The concept is based on using surviving heritage buildings as our anchor. You see on the right is a map of 1890, and on the left, of course, the first page of the project document. So, so far, we've been able to get a 2-kilometer heritage walk notified in the inner core of historic Karachi. On the left, you can see that there's a red trail, and you can see the red circle, which shows which part is now being taken up. This is the first of the 13 segments that we have designed. So I'll just run through it very quickly. Now, what we are doing is really trying to also restore historic buildings that are identified along the trails. And if you see the next slide, in this you can see these are the ones that are there, and we are hoping that we might be able to now start restoration work in them. And I'm hoping that many architects will get involved in this kind of work. These have been all identified and they are all notified, so they can't be demolished, but they are in a highly degraded state. And then there is this concept that I thought I'll show you, which is a low carbon, climate smart, vehicle free street showcasing Karachi's 19th century heritage, which becomes available for outdoor cultural activities as well. And we have 4 urban forests in them. And we also have a lot of terracotta cobbles. We will not use any concrete. It's all low carbon, no steel, no cement, and so on and so forth. So I'll just show you very quickly how the Marriott is at the moment. If you go to the next slide, this is what it is like now. And if you can go to the other one, you can see what we are planning to do. Can you go to the next one? Yes, there it is. So this is as an example of what might be done. And this can be done in any city, really. I think we need to really now convert a lot of vehicular streets into walking streets. So now, as I said in my keynote to 2020 UCLA graduates last week, we must be ready for a paradigm shift in our design conceptions as we prepare ourselves for a world that requires a major reset. we should begin redesigning our urban centers to transform the present carbon intensive environment to an inspired architect and urbanist diction which would tread lightly on the planet. Also, I believe that New York, with its highest infection rate and its high carbon, high density, glittering towers, will no longer be the urbanist future beacon. Instead, as we get accustomed to carrying out business remotely, eco-urbanism will take root, drawing upon age-old wisdom and traditional environments, such as Pakistan's historic cities of Thatta, Lahore, or Peshawar that I've mentioned, aiming for low-rise, medium-density formations with open-to-sky terraces for families to remain in contact with nature when a pandemic strikes, with pedestrian enclaves and local round-the-corner shopping, without being disrupted by vehicular traffic, which should be rightly relegated to the periphery. Now, as the need for extensive vehicular mobility is curtailed and consumption levels are reduced, in the new world order, eco-cities would embody the virtues of carbon-neutral environment, nature conservation and biodiversity enhancement, and conversion of existing vehicular roadways into landscape forested walking streets for lowering pollution levels, interventions that lead to better health and well-being of humankind. Now, in conclusion, as more studies emerge regarding the nexus between climate crisis, pandemics, and poverty, and for architects and urban designers not to lose heart, there appears an opportunity for spawning of a multitude of green strategies. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres articulated this last month, and I quote, by making the transition to low carbon, climate resilient growth, we can create a world that is clean, green, safe, just, and more prosperous for all, unquote. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.